A Love Beach. And I understand, yes, you guys did look like the Bee Gees, but there's a lot of us diehard fans who bought all the albums no matter what. And I know it was Ahmet Erdogan basically said, go on in there and jam and do that. And by the way, you might get solo albums out of this if you do that. What was the atmosphere going into that album?
Ahmet never said, you might get solo albums out of this. What Ahmet said was basically you owe it to yourself to go in and try once more. What he didn't understand is that the group was incredibly fatigued. And, to be in somewhere like Nassau, the Bahamas, is not a place to write a prog album. And a prog album shouldn't be called Love Beach. And that kind of cover shouldn't exist. You shouldn't look like the Bee Gees. Nevertheless, there were a couple of good tracks on there. It was really hard work recording down there. I remember going into the studio at Compass Point one day, and I wanted to listen to the track Canario, which is written by Rodriguez. It was a piece of classical music Keith had chosen. We'd recorded it. And I went in there, and the guys had wiped the hi-hat track. And I said, what's going on here? And, it's the way they are there. They're a little bit loose in the Bahamas. And it was hard work. And it wasn't something that we should have really done. We had a reasonable time doing it, but it was over. And we did it just to placate Ahmet Ertegun, to tell you the truth. Very nice man, but it was all over. And it was going to take 12 years before it came back together again. And that's how long it took.
Okay, it was over at that point. At what point, what led to you guys saying, okay, this is it, before you got back together?
Well, we didn't actually say this is it. We just kind of all went to the various countries that we lived in Europe, and that was it. And then nothing really happened after that, because I ended up building a house, and Asia started, and that went through that, and there was problems with that. And Greg actually did the satellite broadcast from Japan when John Wetton was ill, because John Wetton had a drinking problem, God bless him. And it went on from there. And then sort of at the end of the 80s, I had committed to a third album with Geffen Records. And I got approached by Greg Lake, I think it was, said, we want to put it back together again. Can you do it? And I said, yes, of course I can. Well, anyway, to cut a long story short, they wanted me to join immediately. And I couldn't join immediately because I needed at least 4, possibly 6 weeks to finish off the album. I knew there was 4 weeks in there, but one always adds a couple of extra weeks for working in the studio. So I said, I need 6 weeks. And we'd already been off 12 years now, remember. And I don't know what was said. He said, well, we need to start straight away. I said, well, I can't. And so then the next thing was they wanted to get another drummer. So I said, that's fine. If you want to do that, go for Cozy. I know Cozy well. It's better for me if you go out and work and promote all the product we've made together, then you wait for me if you can't. And if you can't, understood, no bad feelings on my side. But, 12 years is 12 years, another 4 weeks, what difference really would it make? Anyway, they had their mind set. I said, fine, go ahead, do it. And I wish you the very best. And they did. And that's how that worked out, really. And then we got back together as the 3 original members in 91, 92.
There's different thoughts of both prog fans. I remember when I first started writing, they were going, who's this guy? How dare he interview Steve Hackett and all that? Prog fans are a little different. They're wired a little different, but I like that about them. Whenever you get something that's poppy, like Lucky Man, for instance, coming right out of the gate, when we did a top 30 after Keith passed of ELP songs, Lucky Man was number 2. And there was all those guys who were going, oh, how can that be? I'm going, well, Lucky Man's Lucky Man, man. It speaks for itself. But they are wired a little different, prog fans. I'm one of them.
Well, the thing is that basically all of you sort of really got it wrong, because we never gave ourselves the prog label. It was given to us.
Yeah.
Our music is quite eclectic. Let's just look at what there is there. Number one, we don't have a guitar in the band, or we didn't. Greg played very little lead guitar, more rhythm guitar, with the acoustic songs. We played classical adaptations. We were keyboard driven. We played love songs. We played a little bit of rock, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of folk. We were eclectic. And the fact that they called us prog was because we were using the latest instruments of the day, the Moog synthesizer, the Mini Moog, the GX1 and so forth. So, when you say Emerson, Lake and Palmer's a prog band, that's a bit limiting. I mean,
Yeah.
Dream Theater's a prog band. That's a prog band. Emerson, Lake and Palmer weren't a prog band. We just appeared to be one when you heard things like Tarkus. But if you think of Footprints in the Snow, C'est la Vie, From the Beginning, Still You Turn Me On, Lucky Man, these aren't prog pieces.
I'm not sure if it was you or one of the other guys who had mentioned that if there was a guitarist, if there was someone that had the same vision, or another musician in general that had the same vision, he would have been in that band, but that just somehow never happened, right?
We didn't really look, although people all think we did, but you know, there wasn't any. There are more guitar players now that could fill that role. If you look at the period of time during that period, keyboard players there were plenty of great keyboard players. And there were some great guitar players, but they were all blues based. If you look now, there's many great, you know, guitar players who do the gothic shred like Yngwie Malmsteen, and, you know, Paul Bielatowicz, you know, plays all that classical stuff. He's in my band. We didn't have those guys back then. So if those guys were around, they possibly would have been in the band. But it wasn't something we were searching. One of my main reasons for joining the band was I wanted to be in a trio. I'd been in a trio with Chris Farlow, the soul singer, when he couldn't afford a brass section. I'd been in a trio with The Crazy World of Arthur Brown when we had the #1 hit. Atomic Rooster was a trio, and I really only wanted to step into a trio. So ELP, the three of us, you know, that was what it was for me. So I wouldn't have been keen even if Jimi Hendrix did want to join, to be honest with you, though I think he's a great guitar player.
When ELP was riding high, were there drummers out there that you were listening to? Did you have time, or were you too busy being the best you can with yourself?
I listen to drummers nearly every other day, and I write notes down of things that I pick up. You know, that's how you get good. It's when that interest sort of wanes that it's difficult. But for me at the time, we were very busy, so I didn't have YouTube then. If I'd had YouTube, it would have made life a lot easier. So let's just say that I give YouTube a good 2 hours every 3 weeks, every month, just looking at who are the latest drummers, what's the latest stuff that's coming about, just so I know. And then, you know, I might do it every other day for a week, you know, at some stage. If I'm just like today, I was on here. I must have looked for about an hour today just at various stuff. And to be honest with you, I find it such a great educational vehicle. Yeah. And it's one way of, you know, before we'd all get inspired by magazines, but now we can get inspired by seeing, you know, I won't go to a Genesis concert, not because I don't like them. It's just finding the time and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, to be able to pull up a concert or a couple of tracks from a concert and just see how the guys sound is a great thing. And it's a great privilege to be able to do that. And, you know, YouTube brings that to everyone. It's a great learning tool as well.
Yeah. Did your parents, after the success, again, with both, were your parents around? And pardon my ignorance, because I don't know when you had success.
My parents were around during the ELP days. They weren't. My mother was around during the beginning of the Asia success. They were there to see the big ELP success. That's for sure. Yeah.
How does that change around you, though? This is a question I ask everyone because the fans seem to really be intrigued by this. You hit success, all of a sudden, you're still the same guy. You still have the little kid that was always inside of you. But how did your friends in general react to the fact that you were touring all around the world? Did they act differently? Did you lose friends? Did you gain? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I never really had a lot of, I'd never stayed in my hometown. I left home when I was 16. So the friends that I had were musicians I played with. So when I became successful, they just said, good luck to you. We're really pleased that you're doing well. It wasn't a case of the guy down the street is envious of me because of this or that. It didn't work that way then. It wasn't that way. Not for me anyway.
What was the criteria for you guys? I mean, obviously they bring in tunes and you'd bring in ideas, but when you heard a song, would you go back? Would you play it there? Would you come up with because you've come up as a drummer, you would come up with thousands of things that I would never have thought. It
depends, you know, if you take Tarkus, I mean, the actual theme, Tarkus, the actual time signature and where the accents are, where the melody falls, it is what I gave to Keith. And then Keith wrote a melody on top of that rhythmical accented pattern. As far as Greg's concerned, he'd have 3 or 4 chords for a song. and he might not have a middle eight, and he'd walk in with that, and we'd all listen to it and do the best job we could on it, to improve it for him. That's just how we worked. If I ever came in with anything that was worthy, let's say part of tank or whatever, then I would work with Keith on that and we'd develop it accordingly. So that's how it went, really. There was no hard and fast rule. Whoever had the best material, and we just have to take our hats off and say, that's a great piece, we should be going for yours. That's how we did it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your artwork. At what point did that start for you?
1973, I taped a couple of light bulbs to the end of drumsticks with a cable going down to a battery. And I got a guy to just film me miming playing the drums. And the picture was so successful, it went into the Birmingham Mail. So Birmingham is the town that I'm from. And for some unknown reason, it got put in there because it was a classic photo. I've still got the photo. Anyway, roll forward about 40 years, because that was in the 70s. The Chinese started developing drumsticks with little LED lights in the tips of the sticks. No cable. They're all self-generating the minute you pick them up. So I started using them to construct sort of pictures using ELP music, and that's how it started. And I think to date we've sold about 600 canvases, and we've given just over, I don't know, something like $43,000 to various charities. So it's been going some time.
Let's just say you're in a situation where you're in a doctor's office and someone looks at you. I'm just kind of curious, as a man-to-man thing. Someone looks at you and thinks you look a little familiar, or else someone says, hey, what do you do for a living? What do you tell them?
I tell them I'm a musician.
But the next question is, do you do anything that I would know? I mean, it must have come up. I'm curious.
Yes. And I say, well, yes, it's quite possible. You might have heard of this, or you might have heard of that. You have to understand that more people today will know of Asia than they'll know of ELP. And the reason being is that demographic is old. The ELP demographic is quite old. Yes, we are into second generations. Yes, we are into third generations of ELP fans, but they're smaller. They're smaller, where the Asia demographic is kind of still there, because that was 80s. That was 30 years ago. Some of them are like 50 now, 60 maybe. So they probably would remember, they wouldn't remember me, they would remember the song or a song.